Okay, sounds
I
good.
go for it.
All right, great to
Thank
see
you,
everybody. Welcome to the May meeting of the Equity Advisory Committee. I want to acknowledge that COVID-19 is causing us to alter our usual procedures, and we have invited residents of the region to join this meeting virtually. Governor Walz has declared a peacetime emergency, and the Met Council has determined it is not practical or prudent to conduct an in-person meeting for reasons stated in the governor's emergency executive order. So accordingly, Met Council members will participate in this meeting by phone or other electronic means, and this Equity Advisory Committee meeting will be conducted under the Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. And before we call this meeting to order, I have a few quick reminders and guidelines about WebEx and the virtual meeting process. So please remain muted until speaking. And if you're on your phone and computer, just unmute one device when you're speaking so we don't get a feedback loop. Please announce your name before we're speaking. Each of us has our names set up in the meeting in different ways, and so we might not know who you are unless you announce your name, so please do that. Where we get to a place where we're taking a vote, we will do that by roll call, and Irina will be helping us with that by calling us by name to do a roll call vote. Communicate with each other through speaking. The chat function should be used to address any technical difficulties you're having. You can certainly type a question in the chat if we're having difficulty hearing you, but if you are putting comments in the chat, we can't integrate those into our minutes and our meeting well, so please use your voice when you're making comments. If there's a lot of us trying to speak, we'll use the raised hand feature, which you find, let's see, how do you find that? You find it by clicking on the three little dots at the bottom of your screen and then selecting raise hand, and then you can use that and we'll call on you to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak. And you could also type in the chat if that doesn't work for you, that you have a question. We're going to record this meeting and it will be available online. Irina's going to help me monitor the chat because I might not notice things. So she'll help me, and she can also help if there's any technical difficulties. One other thing that I want to share is Francisco is out this evening, and so Councilmember Judy Johnson has graciously accepted the honor of substituting in his place. So she's going to help us out as we go and has a couple parts of the agenda that she'll facilitate. So I think I'll do a call to order. How are we doing on quorum, Irina?
We're not quite there yet. We're up to 7, so we need 3 more to come, but we'll just keep going. Hope some more members jump on.
Okay, that sounds good. So I'll come back and do that. And so then we can't do, if I'm correct, we can't do roll call, approval of agenda, or approval of minutes. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I'll move on to public invitation. There are a couple members of the Met Council here. There may also be members of the public. So any members of the public are invited to bring forth issues for discussion that you'd like us to consider as an Equity Advisory Committee. Do we have any members of the public here that would like to bring forward an issue?
Did we lose our chair?
I am still here.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you lost my picture for a moment. But actually, Judy, I am gonna turn it over to you to do our standing committee updates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. As we are moving through the agenda, also for approval of the agenda, we don't need a vote on that. We would on the minutes. So there's no problem with moving through the agenda at this point for informational purposes. We'll start with standing committee updates. Again, Councilmember Gonzalez is not able to be here, but I can pick up on the management update when it gets down to my turn. And I'm sorry I don't serve on transportation, so I cannot give that update. Also, Councilmember Lee is unable to be here tonight. and I will pick up community development because I am on that. And is Councilmember Sterner on the call yet?
He is not.
Okay, well then it's going to be me, myself, and I. All right. So, and then just as I, want to mention too, Councilmember Ferguson's got an agenda item later for the BIPOC committee work, and he'll be giving that update. But he also chairs management, so he would be an excellent source as well if you have any questions about what the management committee is doing. So let me just start with management. I unfortunately haven't been at the last meeting because I was getting a second shot of COVID vaccination with my daughter that day. But some of the things that are really, I think, relevant to this group that was on the agenda is just making sure, again, that we are reviewing and working towards our MCUB goals. Those are the goals that we have for procurement and ensuring that we've got minority and underutilized business, women-owned business, those types of goals in front of us at all times. So we did get a first quarter procurement summary and goals review that was given to us by Jody Jacoby, who's the director of procurement. Ashante Payne is also involved in all of that as the Office of Equal Opportunity, and he's our assistant director, and others. So I don't know how often that information flows to all of you, but if you haven't seen it, we can certainly make that available. Also, we received a quarterly investment review committee report, and I actually chair that subcommittee. So that's just where we're looking at the council's investments, our investment policies, but we have started this past year a new program for CDs, certificate of deposits. And within that body of work of investments, our goals include making sure that we are investing in minority owned businesses and having certain banks flow that money, in that direction. So we received an update on that. There's a lot more opportunity there because this is still new, but that then all flows up to management and they receive those reports. So at the investment committee meeting that I was chairing, I did ask that if this group would like to better understand those investments and how we're trying to get them into community throughout the region, we're happy to share that as well. And then the committee also received a 2020 Workforce and Affirmative Action Plan follow-up, and Marcy Simon, our Director of Human Resources, and again, Ashante Payne gave that. So if you do want to check those out, you can just go to the Management Committee link on the Met Council's website, and those reports and items are all linked there. And and maybe you're getting those, but if there isn't information that's available through this forum, you can certainly look at information there and request more detail as needed. Happy to provide that. For the Community Development Committee, our last meeting was just yesterday. And I think there's a couple of things of note here. Certainly, we're always working through the comprehensive plan updates as the communities throughout the region finalize those. There's a handful left that still have to submit their plans for 2040, but 2040, yes, yes, sorry. And so that's been a big load of what the Community Development Committee does, but we also are now working on our 2022 community development budget discussions and working around, the resources needing to be allocated around the big goals of the Met Council, which of course include ending racism and ending disparities and building equity throughout the region. So that's just kicking off, and staff is working with us on how to kind of formulate, those initial discussions with council and kick off that work. So again, the budget is always the blueprint that drives the work, in addition to our own internal plans that staff is working on every day with our goals, but I thought you'd want to know that. And then we received a presentation that was really interesting from Tracy Kinney in our Parks Department, along with Amanda Lovely and Jessica Lee. And the presentation was the Regional Park System, Historical and Cultural Study. So I'd invite you to, again, check out the community development link that's on the Met Council's website. The presentation is linked there as well. I believe it's mandatory that we do this work, but what's very interesting is getting to the origins of our parks throughout the system, understanding its true history, engaging community. We'll be hiring a consultant to put together a full parks program and report on this. And it's really trying to get at the underpinnings and the true history of the lands that we are now the stewards of as it relates to our regional park system. So, you know, I also said at that meeting, it might be something that as we move through that and we begin the work, that this group might be in some way interested in advising or taking a look at the work, because we do really want to have a robust set of eyes that are able to bring their own perspectives of community into the work. So I just wanted to raise that. And I'm sorry, I just can't speak on what the other committees are doing at this point in time.
Thank you so much for those updates, Councilmember Johnson. I greatly appreciate them. Does anybody have any questions about the committee's work that Councilmember Johnson can speak to?
Madam Chair, I think what I could do is I could just throw the links for those two sites on our website. And then if anybody wanted to just cruise down those agendas and grab any of the links, it'd be easy to do.
Great. Not seeing any hands raised at this time. I will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is subcommittee updates. As you know, we have started to do some of the work of the EAC through subcommittees. So far, 3 subcommittees have been formed. And I'm wondering, let's start with transportation. Is anyone here from transportation that can give an update? Thank you, T.
Sorry, let me unmute myself. Actually, it's been fun to be on the Transportation Committee. Sarah and I have been asked to be on the interview panel for the Transit Equity Senior Management position. They're doing second round of interviews. So the interviews are being held this week. And so we will update probably next month in terms of how it goes. And I know Sarah's here. Is there anything I forgot, Sarah?
I don't think so. I think we're, regularly able to attend the TAB meetings and just kind of making some ongoing progress in terms of understanding the landscape of transit and transportation at the Met Council and kind of helping us to be in a better place to really determine where we might plug in and be able to take some action more meaningfully in the future.
Right.
And for those of you new members, we would be very delighted to have you join us in our small but mighty transportation committee.
Absolutely.
Thank you for doing that great work, and we'll get to hear a little bit more about the equity and inclusion team at Transit a little bit later in our. How about our housing subcommittee? I believe that the committee has not met in the last couple months and are going to be reorganizing in the next couple months, but please correct if someone is here from the committee and has something that they'd like to share, please do. All right, and from the operations subcommittee, Edward, I see that you're here. I am not seeing other members of our committee. Would you like to give the update from the operations subcommittee, Edward, or would you prefer I do so?
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and take the lead and I'll fill in any gaps.
That sounds great. Over the last month, the operations subcommittee had the chance to meet with staff from the OEO office and learned a bit more both about how the office structures itself, the data available around contracting and employment, and understand what can be disaggregated and what can't be disaggregated. We have established for ourselves a goal for the next meeting to really dig into those opportunities for disaggregating data to help us inform the work and to provide input. And we also have established a monthly meeting schedule. So we're going to be meeting the first Tuesday of the month over the next several months. Edward, what else would you like to add?
No, I think you covered it all. As we move forward, we're, kind of getting this baseline information understood a lot better and the rules around that information. We'll move into the goals we've set for achieving greater equity participation in the hiring process as well as contracting process. It's a lot of information. I will say that, and it's thoroughly kept and organized, but it does inform what we're trying to do from a strategic standpoint.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to pause and ask Irina how we are doing on quorum.
Sorry, I had to mute myself there for a second. We are still not at quorum. 2, 4, 6. We are at 8. So we need 2 more. So at this point, thank you, Councilmember Johnson, for your help with the agenda. I was not aware of that, so I learned something new tonight. So at this point, the only thing that we could still take roll call as normal, and we could, of course, take attendance for everyone that is here, and then it would be the minutes from what is that? It would be from the April meeting that we still would not be able to go forward with. But everything else on our agenda, we would still be able to continue to move forward with. Wait, March minutes. That's right. We didn't have our April meeting. Whew. Yep. Apologies.
Why don't we do that? We'll do roll call, and then if we have a quorum by the end of the meeting, we'll do our approval of minutes at the end of the meeting. And if not, we'll approve them in a batch at our June meeting.
That sounds like a great plan. Okay. So I'm going to take attendance. I'm going to call you by last name, then first name. And if you are here, please say aye, yes, here, whatever you feel like for the evening. So Block, Lenice. Ellis McGregor, Nicole.
Here.
Goldstein Moses, Leah.
Here.
Gonzalez Francisco, he is out. Jenkins, Nicholas. Johnson, Judy.
Here.
Lee, Chai, he is out. Luceni, Michael. McDonald, Edward.
Here.
Miller, Juliana.
Here.
Way, T.
Here.
Rothstein, Brienne.
Here.
Rudolph, Sarah.
Here.
Sheikh Mohammed. Sitate Munene, Nalima. Sterner, Philip. Irvina Davis, Anita. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is a presentation from the Transit Equity and Inclusion team. They are going to introduce their team, equity initiatives, and have space for discussion. Lesley, Kandaras, Sarah Berres, Igure, Claudius, Toussaint, and Rachel Cagle are gonna give a presentation. Is the whole team here that is gonna be presenting tonight? Or do we need to wait for anybody before we go into that presentation?
Chair, hi, this is Lesley Kandaras. I'm looking to Sarah and Rachel to tell me if we're missing anybody. Rachel's on the call. But I see at least some of our presenters are here. Sarah, do we need to wait to start, or are we okay to go?
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted. No, no, the only one missing right now is Rachel, and we can I can certainly help cover any of that if she's unable to make it before we get to her time. So.
That sounds great. And if as you're presenting, you want to introduce yourself, I'd appreciate it because I am certain that I mispronounced some of the names and I'd love for everybody to hear your actual pronunciation of your names.
All right, well,
All right.
Chair, I can start if, yep, great, the PowerPoint's coming up. So good evening. My name is Lesley Kandaras. I work at Metro Transit as the Chief of Staff to the General Manager. As the first slide shows, we had initially intended to be here last month, and since the meeting was canceled when the verdict in the Chauvin trial came down, we're really glad you can make time for us this evening instead. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to give a quick overview and hand it off to the equity and inclusion team members, since I really want you to hear from them and have an opportunity to talk with them about their work. But in my role at Metro Transit, I also have the privilege of serving as executive sponsor for this team. Next slide, please. And Metro Transit has come in front of the Equity Advisory Committee a few times in the last several months. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes to kind of refresh some of what we've shared with you before and connect it to the work of the equity and inclusion team before handing it off to them. So as we've talked with you about, I think last fall, Metro Transit is really focused on ensuring we're meeting the commitments in Thrive MSP 2040, the Metropolitan Council's equity policy, and other documents and commitments our organization has made publicly to really make sure we are applying an equity lens to our planning, operations, and investments. And at Metro Transit, that really falls into a few large buckets of work. One is just fundamentally the transit service we provide. We know investing in high quality transit and serving our communities is one way that we can be part of advancing equity here in the region. A second bucket is really the programs we are instituting to improve transit access and quality. So programs such as our Transit Assistance Program, which provides dollar rides to people who meet certain income qualifications, our Better Bus Stops program, which has really made a lot of improvements in bus shelters, particularly in areas of concentrated poverty. These are different investments we make in addition to our underlying transit service to really increase the utilization of transit. And then the final piece, the organizational practices that are critical to equitable processes and outcomes. To me, this is really where the equity and inclusion team has a tremendous and indispensable role to play. As you'll see tonight, our equity and inclusion team is comprised of members from really a cross section of our organization. And Metro Transit is a large division. We have over 3,000 employees spread across many different facilities in various lines of work. And so some of the organizational practices we need to have in place are really making sure we have good channels of communication with our frontline employees and our employees throughout the organization to inform our work going forward. Next slide, please. And I'm not going to dwell on this slide, but when I was here back in November, I shared with the committee kind of a sense of the work we're undertaking here at Metro Transit. And I won't read through the whole slide, but I mainly wanted to put this back in front of you to say, you know, we're trying to advance equity on several fronts. And certainly a big chunk of that is fostering a workplace that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive. And again, I think the E&I team you're hearing from tonight is playing a central role in that work. But in general, we continue to be really interested in ways that we can further collaborate with the EAC and receive your advice. And certainly the subcommittee on transportation with Sarah and T has been really helpful in helping us reach that goal. So with all of that, I'm going to turn it over and have you hear from the team themselves. So I think Sarah, you're next, right?
Yes, could you advance the slide, please? Thank you. So my name is Sarah Berres, and I am the Equity and Inclusion Specialist with Metro Transit. And one of my roles is to help facilitate the coordination and the implementation of the Equity and Inclusion team and its work. So if you could advance the slide, please. Thank you. So this is a lovely photograph of our team as a whole. So like Lesley discussed, we have a collection of staff from across the organization. We have mechanics and operators, engineers, marketing staff, police officers, supervisors, managers, assistant directors, just a huge collection of essential expertise of these individuals who are leading equity in their own daily work, in their own divisions, on their own teams, and they really are these people who help connect the equity work throughout the organization. And so what this looks like for us, if you could go to the next slide, please. This year we did a pretty hefty review of our mission, our scope, redesigned our charter, kind of reset ourselves in the light of all of the equity work, the enhanced focus on equitable outcomes at Metro Transit. We really wanted to lean into that even more. So our mission, we really want to harness the value of diversity in our region and our workforce, creating really creative ways to address those needs. And expanding Metro Transit's commitment to equity and inclusion for employees and our customers. And so what that looks like for us on an ongoing basis is ongoing equity action recommendation, both for internal elements and external elements. We're partnering with our internal communications manager to enhance what it means to really engage our staff and have that diverse, equitable workforce and really hear from them what that means and provide a response to that. Taking on special projects and supporting teams who are leading internal and external equity work. So we are really finding ways to embed our team and our expertise in a lot of places while also taking lead on some other unique projects. And with that, I'm really, really thrilled to introduce to you two of our new team members who are going to share more of what this team is, what equity is, how it's really activated through their work, and things from their perspective, because we want you to meet our team. So if you could go to the next slide, I would love to introduce Erica Igure and Claudius Toussaint, who are here to share a little bit. And I believe, Erica, if you are here, I thought I saw you earlier. Feel free to hop on.
I'm here, and forgive me that my name is Metro. I do not know how to change that on the screen. But yes, good evening, and thank you for your attention tonight. I am Erica Igure. I'm an operator at Metro Transit. I joined the Equity and Inclusion team because I have always seen value in diversity and inclusion. It wasn't until I joined that I learned what equity actually was. I've been an operator for about 12 years, and by being surrounded by people from all walks of life, it made complete sense to my heart to be a part of the team, standing for what it does. Serving the community has taught me many things, but one thing stands out, and that is everyone deserves to be heard and seen, regardless of background, style of speech, education level, who we love, or what we believe. I'm hoping that one main impact of the team will be to show others what E&I actually looks like. Our E&I leaders, Sarah and Rachel, have done an excellent job at really being inclusive when it comes to who was selected on the team. Our team is so diverse. We literally have people from all areas and departments. And I mean, Sarah, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna say, like at our meetings, I'm just amazed when I look around at our team members and I see supervisors, people from marketing, drivers, revenue operations, officers, engineer outreach, like just people from all over the place. We all come together in a safe place and we all have a seat at the table. We all have a voice. One thing that I look forward to by working on this team is really promoting equity. I believe equity involves trying to understand and give people what they need to fully enjoy and live healthy lives, giving a voice to the unheard. Our team members all have different backgrounds, and that really helps open doors to understanding. We work together using our resources and knowledge to help build a system that will be able to support this change within our organization and our community. One equity and inclusion project that I personally have been involved with is a new Metro Transit job / opportunity information session. And it's a safe place where people can ask questions and really get some insight on what's available for like job opportunities. Like if there's any openings, they can like tune in. We're gonna try to do it once a month and they can ask questions to the people in charge of those positions. And it's just really exciting. I feel like it will help make a difference because it opens up that opportunity for people and it makes it more accessible for everyone, especially for people who feel stuck or maybe they feel like they've been forgotten. And that brings me joy. Okay, that's all I have right now. And thank you so much for listening. I'm done.
Thank you, Erica. And Claudius?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Claudius Toussaint with the Office of Engineering within Metro Transit. And I'm excited about this opportunity to share with you my vision of equity that is up for debate within our team. I applied to join the equity team because Metro Transit, under its current leadership, has expressed interest in making a change, a positive change, and I would like to be part of that change. There are many topics on equity I would like to explore with you, but because of our constraints on time, I would like to limit my remarks to two distinguishing elements of equity, and those are fairness and sustainability. Now, I've read our various articles on equity, and I've listened to the discourse, and it appears the definition of equity that is being suggested take us back to equal opportunity. Now, that's important because the definition of the term defines the problem, it sets expectation, and it foretells the outcome. And so I would like to highlight that equity is not separate, but it is apart from equal opportunity. For equal opportunity does not equate fairness of outcome. And while there are many statutes governing the ethics of equality, equity, on the other hand, follows the natural laws of fairness. Fairness, it's a moral principle that forms the basis of the human condition. Fairness takes us beyond the opportunity to become part of our prescribed function. I think it was Theodore Roosevelt who said, wisdom, who saw wisdom in a broader outlook beyond our technical competencies and our mere utility, when he said, to educate a person in mind and not in moral is to educate a menace to society. And so I believe that is true for organizations. The council's approach to equity must be rooted in fairness. And if we do not interweave that moral thread into the structural fabric of the organization, it too will become a menace to the communities it serves. For it goes without a question that this institution, the council, as all institutions within this democracy, the United States, have a responsibility to improve the policies and, as importantly, the practices and the processes that are part of its fabric. And so what is what is up for debate within our team, and what I'm advocating, is the moral development of the council, the making of an organizational citizenship. Now, I realize that equity has become fashionable, much like the words equal opportunity and affirmative action once were. But to make a difference, there must be a commitment to a moral change. But beyond the moral underpinnings of equity, there is the question of sustainability. As a practicing engineer, as a professor in engineering, I view equity through the lens of sustainability. You see, the council is charged with planning, designing, constructing much of the region's infrastructure. And for our infrastructure to be sustainable, we must place more emphasis on the importance of the social impacts of our engineering activities. You see, sustainable infrastructure has in it a marriage between economic development and the social and environmental responsibilities that we have. It also has with it an optimal distribution of resources, considering all costs and all benefits. And so I look forward to discussing the place equity has in the council's infrastructure within our team. Now, I understand the council does not have the mandate to change all of society, but it has the obligation to the community it serves. We do not have the capacity to change all of society, but I believe we can serve as an example to what a humanistic organization can be. The council cannot isolate from beliefs and attitudes of oppression, but it can insulate from those beliefs and attitudes. It can do so through accountability, transparency, and a working environment that is unambiguous and principled in fairness. And so, Chair, committee members, I will stop preaching as I think that I may have exceeded my time. But I would like to again thank you for this opportunity and for lending me a hearing ear. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
So as you can see, we have some really incredible members from our team. I know we have some other members from the team who are also on the call right now, but won't be speaking up right now, but hopefully will participate in a discussion. And so before we get there, after this perspective, we wanted to give you a small flavor of some of the focus areas that we have for this year. And so I have Rachel Cagle, who is going to give a higher level overview of that. So if you could advance the slide, please, as Rachel comes online.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Everything working? Okay, that is wonderful. You can advance one more slide. So I'm going to talk about what we're going to be focusing on in 2021. And our work plan is not yet finalized. I should probably introduce myself first. Hi, I'm Rachel Cagle. I dropped off a little bit late. You guys are ahead of schedule. So here I am. I'm the coordinator. I work with Sarah Berres in our staff unit. So I am the equity and inclusion coordinator. And I'm talking tonight about our 2021 work plan. Not yet finalized, but we have these 4 main goals that we wanted to share with you tonight. Within these goals are initiatives and projects that support the 2020 equity recommendations, and new programming ideas as well, generated by like our continued discussion that we have with our team members and other work that we hear throughout Metro Transit. So this first one, establishing monthly DEI-focused internal and external engagement. We really want to be able to strengthen internal communication to share with our wider workforce the progress updates on our equity work. We want to work on diversifying voices in our internal newsletter, things like that, really working on our engagement. We want to be able to also work cross-departmentally and connect the, Metro Transit is huge, and trying to connect across all those different levels, from, senior leaders and officers from our Metro Transit Police to coming to the garage to talk directly to operators, for example. We're working on our Heritage Month communication, education, employee spotlights, things like that. Our second goal here, improving workplace culture through employee workplace and supportive resources. That's things like assisting in policy review. Some of our members have identified opportunities for creating checklists to help with employee onboarding and orientations, a checklist for when people are leaving and we don't want to lose our expertise that's going out, audits for technology, things like that. Establishing our equity and inclusion team recommendation process, which we've started and we want to continue. We want to use our staff input, we want to use community input, and we want these things that we're collecting to influence our Metro Transit work plan. So this is like the huge question right now. How do we make sure that we have that accountability, that all this feedback that we're collecting gets cycled into our work to create change? And one way that we see we can do that is structuring the feedback so that it's coming to us and through us in a streamlined manner. Maybe integrating key performance indicators, including them in that. And finally, increasing diversity of applicants and hiring pools. That's a big one for us. Providing further assistance to the processes that HR already have in place and helping out with that. So developing diverse recruitment networks for the different divisions within Metro Transit. And then, as Erica mentioned, hosting these information sessions for open positions so that people can learn more about it and learn if they are eligible and how they can become eligible, and really capitalizing on the great workforce that we already have. So those were the couple of goals. Again, much to be determined amongst our team, but we really do have the talent there to make this happen. That's all from me. Next. Sorry for the baby crying in the background if you heard that. She's fine.
So I don't think, could you advance the slide? I'm not sure if we actually, there we go, questions. So that was the end of our official presentation. We wanted to give you, a taste of how things have really come together in this last year. We finished onboarding all our expanded teams. So we have 20 members right now on the team. We did some recruitment and brought everyone on and got everyone onboarded through the month of April. So we're really kicking off strong right now and I'm feeling excited for everything that's coming. So we wanted to share that with you and would love if you have additional questions or anything for us. We'd love to take some time to talk with you.
So I want to really thank you, Lesley, Sarah, Erica, Claudius, and Rachel for this presentation. And we'll just take any questions that you have or ideas you have from our committee members.
couple of questions. First of all, Claudius, thank you so much for your characterization of equity. The measurement of effort and opportunity is critically, it falls very short. And until we start measuring outcomes instead of effort, we won't ever achieve equity. So a perfect example that none of us maybe have to think about on a day-to-day basis is the vaccination deployment and just all the effort that was put into that didn't achieve the outcomes that across racial equity. So, you know, we often kind of pat ourselves on the back and say, well, we tried really hard and we tried all these things. That doesn't say it's discrimination if the outcomes aren't equitable. And I think that language is so compelling. So thank you for that, Claudius. My question is, what are the two most proudest achievements, particularly external equity initiatives, policy, or programs? You did list a lot of good ones internally, but what are your two most proudest achievements from the last year, policy or programs for the community, for the clients, customers? And then what two actions do you want help or need help achieving over the next year regarding, again, more the external? I'm more interested in kind of the customers and the clients and the community rather than the staff. So that's my question. I know it's not geared to anyone specific, but if you have one, you each could share one. I'm just interested in what you've done, actions, and then what you're looking to do where you might need some support.
I'm
Sarah's still thinking. I'll hop in. There's one that immediately came to mind that was a huge external effort, and that is, it's a while back now. It was in 2019, we did this really big external. We came to the EAC at that time to talk about this anti-sexual harassment campaign that went it had a very external focus, and it was very much Metro Transit wants to provide assistance to community that, you know, realizing we're part of the public and harassment happens in public spaces, and how can we take a role in that? And also, how can we, to Claudius's point of changing morale, like change the culture? We wanted to take a part in changing the culture of saying that sexual harassment is not okay, and we all need to take our part. And here is Metro Transit wanting to take a part in that. And it was a starting point. It wasn't perfect, and it also was a really vocal piece that we took. And I was kind of like the lead of that project at the time that it went out. If we move it forward, we will move it forward. When we move it forward, it will probably have much more collaboration, since Sarah and I have been here longer and have more allies. We know where they are. And also that got us connected to this new research group called the Gender Equity Collaborative and Gender Equity and Transportation Collaborative. And they just started their website. Maybe I can drop it in the chat. And I'm a part of that. And it's a way to kind of come together around that topic. And I've been following up with that, and the next step that I'm hoping to take is a more internal look at helping our employees find resources and have a better infrastructure for our employees, our workforce who are experiencing discrimination and harassment. Muting now.
Something else I will add, just two other things. One that we didn't have, our team itself didn't have direct leadership over, but we have been in collaboration with them, was our outreach and engagement groups did these listening and learning sessions this last year to hear from community, understand what their focus is, what they want the focus to be of Metro Transit, which the outcomes from that was really a greater focus on equity and how are we weighing equity when we're making planning decisions. And in addition to that, there's also the TAP programming, which Lesley commented on earlier. And we last year became trained as became trained in the TAP program so we could sign people up. And through both of those methods, we identified those as opportunities for our team to help expand capacity for making those connections to community members to both listen and learn what it is that they need, help bring that information back. We can utilize it to help drive some of the decisions that we need to make for our team. And so a lot of that information has influenced this year's planning. And in addition, the TAP programming, that's a smaller program. It's very much needed. There's been a lot of success with that, with it being a young program. And so our team is able both to support the work that's happening there, but we're also, because we're trained, we're able to organize our own events, sign people up as we're creating things. And our hope this year is, well, when the pandemic calms down and maybe we can go back out in public a lot more, to be organizing a lot more of those events to bring that important resource to the community. And I saw in the chat, what is TAP? So that is the Transit Assistance Program. And so basically it offers dollar rides to community members who meet a certain threshold requirements, mostly on income.
I see hands. Oh, go ahead.
Nothing. I was just going to say, so those were kind of, I know the original question was kind of to come achieved and then things that you were hoping for. I feel like we're talking up, but Claudius or Erica, if you have anything that you'd like to throw in here, and I see Tracy and Andrew are also here as well. I'll just pause just to give space for someone else if you'd like to talk other than me.
Well, I don't know about achieving, but what I have tried to do is to incorporate humanities and social thoughts in all of my courses, whether it be a transportation engineering or structural engineering, so that a rondo type situation does not happen. Much of equity has to do with power structure. And even within our community, our power is limited to recommendations. And so I've tried to recommend certain initiatives within the organization, within my office. Some have been implemented, some has not. But like everyone else, the question is questioning oppressive practices, speaking out, doing what we can within our limits. And that's what I have done thus far. And that's why I'm excited to be part of a team, which is beyond just myself, so that we can make some positive change.
I see hands raised from Nicole, Sarah, and Edward. So why don't we take your questions in that order? Nicole, if you want to go next.
Yes, I just have a question in terms of when you get that feedback from community, what are some of the ways that you get the feedback? And then what do you do with the feedback in terms of evaluation for like those community listening sessions and things like that?
Yeah, so I've been kind of focusing on creating a streamlined process for that. We have a community outreach team that has done a lot of work on, streamlining how they get that information, how they categorize it, and how it gets back to, the places it needs to be. For example, if something comes in through one outlet, how like that person connects it to the department within Metro Transit. They already have systems in place for that. And what Sarah and I and the equity and inclusion team want to do, as that was listed under one of our goals, is create a similar streamlined process for the internal side. And then that from there, we're working on something like a continuous improvement plan so that we have, we have a second part of that streamlined process to get it to wherever it needs to go within. There's almost every department, large department within Metro Transit does something with feedback. And we just want to make sure that that is integral, sure that that feedback creates change within the organization. It's in process. Sarah or Lesley, feel free to, or other team members for ideas, you know, how we're going to move that forward. But it's the kind of the big question, right?
This is Lesley. I'll just add, I think Rachel did a
No.
nice job kind of teeing up how we're thinking about this. We do have a public engagement unit at Metro Transit. Sarah referenced some of their work last year when we did the listening and learning through crises engagement, to really hear from people who are still writing the system about how COVID, the murder of George Floyd, and other crises in 2020 were affecting them and how they were thinking about what they need from transit. So we have full-time engagement staff who build partnerships in different sectors of the region. But to Rachel's point, I think part of our ongoing work is ensuring that not only are we doing engagement effectively, but part of judging the effectiveness is the way we integrate and incorporate that feedback into our decision making, and really making sure we can be clear within Metro Transit, but also transparent to the public about how what we're hearing from community is influencing and shaping our decisions. So to Rachel's point, it is a work, it's always work we can do better at, but it's something we're really focused on continuing to improve.
Thank you. That's a good way to ensure sustainability, that the policies, you know, turn into action and that they are sustainable for equity. So thank you.
And Sarah Rudolph, would you like to share your comment or question?
Thank you. In listening to the presentation and your comments, I was struck by really two things. Mr. Toussaint's sort of call for equity as a moral imperative, and really thinking about what that means and how the Met Council could take that on. And then the other thing was the photo of the equity staff that are part of this effort. I'm just wondering if any of you could speak to not only the work that you do, but really just the incredible cross-cutting nature of that group, where you have engineers and operators and everything in between who are part of this, who are working together, who are able to feel like you're part of something with that type of team, and just how that experience is and how that might be different or similar to your everyday working experiences, and just what that means for you in terms of being part of this equity effort.
So to answer that, I'd invite Erica or Claudius, Andrew or Tracy, who are on the call. You're all members of the team and have experienced that kind of from, you know, Rachel and I are in kind of these spaces and working to create that all the time. That's our job, but you're kind of coming in and settling in there. And so I'd love to hear from you what your perspective is on that point from Sarah.
I would say that it's a great thing to have such a diverse group. I know as an operator, there's a stereotype when it comes to officers that they don't care, they don't show up on time, we call when there's a problem and no one's to be found. And just by having officers on our team, I can talk to them and gain understanding. And they're like, look, we're underfunded and our job is rough. And we have a lot of people going out, you know, leaving the force because they're not getting paid enough for the drama. So, I mean, I feel like relationships is the foundation of everything. When you know somebody, it breaks down stereotypes, it breaks down assumptions, and it just gives you understanding, you know, it gives you a lot of understanding. So yeah, I love our team. I love that we're so different. And it's really cool to talk to people that are like, you know, their position I have no idea about, but I can feel comfortable with still talking to them, even though sometimes things are like flying over my head with terms or acronyms, but it's okay. So yeah, it's really nice.
Thank you.
And this is Claudius. To answer the first part of your question, how do we initiate a more moral organization? So when I speak of a more moral development of the council, I also talk about organizational citizenship. What that means is that a code of conduct that perpetuates fairness. It identifies what is fair, what is right, what is acceptable. Even within our society, right, there's a code of conduct that governs everything. I think within the organization, because we are not able to fully influence who comes within our organization. We are able to influence their conduct when they arrive within our organization, right? And so we can do that by insisting on what I call an organizational citizenship that tells employees what is acceptable, what is fair. Not what is legal, but what is right, a sense of righteousness within the organization. And I'm excited because I'm excited about the diversity of our team, from operators to engineers, as you mentioned. I'm excited because inequity is as diverse, experiences in inequity as diverse as the folks experiencing inequities. And what I have discovered in the conversations we've had as a group is the cross-section of experiences people have had. All experiences of inequality and inequity, but with a different face, a different way of conduct. And it gives us a fuller picture of the practices and processes of inequity that goes beyond just what we usually talk about, words that may offend someone. Inequity is not about words that offend people. It's about a system of oppression. And we need to know the depth of that system of oppression. And in order to do that, we need a full cross-section of the folks who have been oppressed.
Thank you.
Edward, you're next.
Oh, thank you. Hello, everybody. First of all, congratulations to this team. It's really nice to see and hear about the work you're doing, but it's also just as nice, if not nicer, the diverse group of people that's engaged in it and working real hard to just respect, try to build that moral imperative for equity that Mr. Toussaint is talking about. So that's very, very, very much appreciated, and it's just really good to see it. Well, let me just comment on Mr. Toussaint's aspirational vision. I think you're right on target. It would be absolutely marvelous, and at some point in human relations, we will get to that point. But we don't have to look back to Rondo days to see why T21 civil rights laws are important, environmental impact analysis are important, equal opportunity and the enforcement thereof of all of those are important. we can just look back to a number of years ago when the light rail was expanding down University Avenue. And personnel within the Met Council didn't want stations located in low-income communities there. The Met Council was making all kinds of concessions to the University of Minnesota and NPR, but when it came to low-income Rondo and communities of color and low-income communities, none were being made. In fact, they were refusing to even do an environmental impact analysis to determine what impact it would have on it, or hold all of the struggling businesses along University Avenue harmless from the big equipment coming in and crushing the old buildings and shaking them off their foundation, or the patronage to those businesses being stopped and struggling businesses basically falling by the wayside. But they did when the community organized and said, we want the rail line, we want our stations, we want to be held harmless, we want an environmental impact study. And they moved into court in order to force people who had not developed that moral compass of equity and inclusion and care for other human beings, had not embraced that inside the Met Council. However, with that being said, I think you're exactly right. That is where we need to go. And you see remnants of that starting to happen with this team. And that's what's so exciting about it. So to my two questions, I wanted to have Lesley just tell me a little bit about, in that list of things you showed on the board, those was an important list and pretty powerful, to talk a little bit about the, budgeting around equity. What are some of the things you do as it relates to budgeting? And then I wanted to ask the team, how do you intersect with other or interact with other teams within different divisions within the Met Council with your work?
Sure. Well, I'm happy to take that first question about budget. So one of the commitments Metro Transit made last June was that we would start more intentionally and deliberately applying an equity lens to our budget. And the primary driver of the Metro Transit budget itself is really the service we provide, what it costs to put buses and trains out in service, the operators, the parts, the mechanics, all the work that just makes transit possible is really the largest component of our budget. So in order to start thinking about that through an equity lens, our service development staff and another unit at Metro Transit called Strategic Initiatives, which really is our data and analysis group, work together to do a service equity analysis of our service plan to really understand who we're serving, who we're maybe not serving well, and understand how that service plan, which is such a large part of the Metro Transit budget, relates to equity. And that was a document we were able to walk through with T and Sarah and the subcommittee, and certainly would welcome the opportunity to present it to the full committee as well if that's of interest. But that's one key component of thinking about budget and equity. The other components include making sure we're funding the programs that make transit more accessible and more likely to lead to people actually using transit. We've talked about some of those tonight. Sarah mentioned how this team has been really critical in doing additional outreach for our transit assistance program. But then the other bucket too, when it comes to thinking about equity in our budget, is really making sure we're funding the organizational practices that lead to equity. So making sure we have funding for public engagement staff, to make sure we have people who their full-time jobs is really to be out in community, fostering relationships, understanding the needs of the people we serve and the communities that we're connected to. We think extensively about disadvantaged business enterprise and MCUB, Metropolitan Council underutilized business programs to ensure when we're spending money, we're doing so in the communities that we serve, and have, in many cases, firms that have been underrepresented in government procurement, making sure that when we're purchasing things, we're contracting with entities that are owned by people of color and women. So I don't know if I'm really adequately addressing your question, but certainly it's something we're giving a lot of thought to. And I think it was on my list. If not, it was an omission, but I feel like that was one of the elements we flagged as an area that, you know, we would be really open and excited to work with Equity Advisory Committee to continue to really develop and refine how we think about that relationship, because fundamentally our budget shows our priorities. It's, you know, to the theme of the night, it's a moral document in many ways. And so really ensuring that we're being intentional and deliberate about how equity is informing it and is impacted by it is really critical.
Thank you.
And to your second question on interacting with the other teams at the other divisions, in the past, the work of the different equity teams at the different divisions really settled in this kind of shared space of what are the shared needs at the divisions, what are identified opportunities for improvements or areas that we're hearing from staff are needed, and how can we collaborate on those and try to drive kind of more broad impact across the entire council by collaborating together. Right now, from what I understand, the other divisions are going through a bit of a reorganization, I guess I could call it, where they're refining what they refer to themselves as equity change teams. What's their change team's purpose? What is their design? What is their role within the organization? Much like we did this last year and took a look at what is our team, what do we do, what is our role, how do we interact, where do we play, how do we influence? The other teams are doing that, and we still maintain good contact with the leads of those different teams and stand kind of ready and open to look at what does collaboration look like when they have those redesigns completed. But one area that I think is really promising and kind of settling into a continuation is with some of the ongoing learning, the education, and I think to Claudius's point of setting some of that understanding, that shared understanding, that moral kind of compass that we can help create is a collaborative effort between the different teams on what do we want to recognize within our organization? What kind of cultures are we celebrating? What kinds of events and things are we going to call out and make sure that people within the organization understand and are aware, and we're building just that sense of humanity, just seeing each other and celebrating that. And so we've been working collaboratively to identify ways that we can share that information more broadly. How can we partner on different projects to bring information across the council? And in discussions with those groups as well, while they're going through that redesign, we've been re-engaged by OEO. I know Sai's on the call today, and along with the RA change team and some of their work. And so there's a lot of new relationship happening right now. And so while we all continue to recenter our focus, I think we're all working on also coming into alignment across divisions for the greater good of the council as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, so much for the thoughts. I was really struck by these underlying themes of building a team, building relationships, listening, and the moral development, and that the work of policy change, practice change, impact really happens through those pathways. So thank you. I have one question. I'm not seeing any of my other committee members raising their hands, so I'll interject this question. Our committee, the Equity Advisory Committee, was established to advise the council around policy and appropriate processes for monitoring the council's performance. And given that our role is to advise the council, what things would you like to see from us to be a good partner in the work that you're doing?
I smile because I hear my teammates' voices in my head. We would love for you to join us for some of our discussions. You know, like we said, our team works, and I think that we are looking at a year ahead of, well, the rest of this year ahead of us, that we are going to thrive and do more for our organization than we may have done ever before. And I think that's because we've laid a foundation of relationship building, and like Erica commented, a safe space where we can have strong discussions on important topics. And for us to be a partner with you and for you to be a partner with us, we want to create those relationships with you. And so whatever that looks like, if there's a couple of you who can join us, you know, on a fairly regular basis. And I don't know, Lesley, if I'm even like breaking any rules here, but I know that my teammates would say, we want to have you come be with us, be in relationship with us, and partner with us to help design what that path and that partnership actually looks like.
And, you know, I would like to second that and also say that, you know, we've seen things move so fast, amazing things happen as a result of the pandemic. And we had to move so fast and make big change. This place that, you know, has not in the past made a lot of big changes. And, you know, a lot of it had to do with equity because we had to focus on the people that needed transit the most during the pandemic. And I've had discussions with our transit planning or our planning team. And, you know, right now we're deciding what to focus on as the world hopefully comes back into normal. What are we going to focus on? And so I second that call. I really think that adding to our diverse equity and inclusion team, if we can add your diverse voices to that call and together we have powerful voices, I think we can really start to create that sustainable change that will take us into the future.
Yeah, so for me, if I may, the council cannot hope to be part of the solution to regional inequities without first becoming an equitable organization. And so at some point, I would like it if you would share with us the committee's strategy for identifying inequities within the council and your proposals for addressing those inequities.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I've noted down some of those requests and they'll be in our minutes as well. And just for those of you that aren't monitoring the chat, there was a question in the chat about what the TAP stands for. And the answer given was the Transit Assistance Program, and with some links to that. So those will go out in our minutes as well.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have my hand up, if I may.
Yes.
And I would just say whatever Met Council Transit through this work is inviting the EAC into, if you could be just really specific and get the information to the chairs so that it can get out to the committee members so that they understand what their role would be, what the time needed would be, what you know you're looking for around certain tasks. I just know it's really important to communicate specificity to the greatest extent possible in the work so that people then can opt in and you know come ready to help instead of it kind of. I'm just going to be really honest. I've been through a lot of meetings, really great intentions, and this work is phenomenal. Trust me, you guys are rocking it. But also, you know, kind of at the end of a meeting when, oh, we'd love your help, but then it trails off without, you know, the hard ask and to, you know, make sure that all of the details are there. So I just encourage you to, the EAC is also a great group of people. So if there's going to be connectivity, just be specific so that it can happen with, I think, the greatest ease possible for people to bring their best talents forward.
Thank you.
Thanks. Brianne, I see you have your hand up. We are going to move on pretty shortly. Is it a fast comment or question, or would
Yes,
it be okay
very
if we move
fast.
on? Okay.
Very fast. I just wanted to say we are a sounding board and a support for the hard work that you're trying to do when you need Met Council approval. So if there are things that you're working on that are very big and bold and you need support and sounding board, and that's a place for you to come back to us and say, we're working on this TAP 2.0 and we need your comments and feedback so that we can bolster the program and advocate at the Met Council level. I think that's an appropriate role for us too. So that's why I asked what your two big initiatives were, so that we could help support you if we all agree they make sense. And so I offer that as well.
Thank you. And Sarah made a comment, which I would echo, which is that we are very lucky that transportation is one of our subcommittees, and we have members on that subcommittee, and they can really be our conduit for communication back and forth. So thank you, Sarah, for pointing that out. Thank you, team, for joining us. I'm now going to turn it over to Councilmember Johnson for the next part of our agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have the introduction of the BIPOC committee to the EAC tonight, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you Councilmember Chris Ferguson, who also chairs the management committee, and he is here tonight to share the work of the newly formed or recently formed BIPOC committee with all of you. So Chris, I know you're on the call. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. So I just wanted to start and just want to introduce for everyone what the BIPOC committee is, and I guess if you have any other sort of questions on the various equity pieces that that come to the management committee, we can definitely talk about that. So there's obviously a business item that was passed for the creation of the BIPOC committee, which I'm sure everybody probably had an opportunity to read. But I think in sort of the Coles Notes version, we were looking for an opportunity for the BIPOC members of the council to be able to just get together and talk about issues that were relevant and just from our perspective. And a couple of us actually happened to meet with the Lieutenant Governor, and we're sort of curious how she started doing that in the House. And she said her advice was just sort of do it and beg for forgiveness. Well, the council has more rules than maybe the House does. So when we wanted to get together and just have a conversation, we realized that 6 or 7 council members can't just get together and have a conversation without it being publicly noticed and following a number of procedures and processes. So we created the BIPOC working group to be able to allow us to talk about issues that are germane to the council and things that are particularly focused to the BIPOC community in our region. And so we are not a policy-making body, so any policy recommendations or thoughts that we would have to flow up probably through the management committee. We are actually seen as a subcommittee of the management committee. So they'd flow up through the management committee, but if it was related directly with one of the other committees, then it may potentially be a recommendation to one of the other committees to take up an item or to discuss or consider an item. So most of the work has really been focused around 2 primary areas. So, the main focus has been thinking about how do we work to reduce or eliminate racial disparities within our region and within the council. And so our work in that space has been focused so far on really 2 areas. One is on increasing our spend with minority-owned businesses within our region, and our own spend, and then also working outside the council and thinking just more broadly in our region. How do we partner with others to be able to do that? And then the second part is thinking about our employee base. So our employees we have a large portion of our employees that are people of color. Many of those are bus operators, but we don't do as good a job at cultivating our existing employee base for future leadership roles and opportunities. So just really thinking about how do we take the one is keep the employees that we have so that we create an environment that they can be successful in, and they want to stay and want to be continue to be part of the council, but then also work diligently to ensure that they have the education and access to opportunities to be able to move from an entry level position to a management level position, and then ultimately beyond. So those are really the two areas of focus that we have. I think some of you I know. In my day job, as we often talk about, is I own a small business where we work with a couple of government entities, not the Met Council, of course, but other entities, and we do printing products and promotional items, apparel. We run most of Ramsey County's work that the county does, and we do a lot of work with Xcel Energy, St. Paul Saints, YMCA, and a number of other organizations. And I also work to do training around the world with some companies around value creation. So that's sort of what I do in my day job, and gives just an opportunity to, when we talk about reducing equity, reducing disparities in the region, I'm one of those businesses that is a registered minority-owned business. I've been so for 11 or 12 years, so you understand a lot of the trials and tribulations that go on with respect to access to capital and opportunity within the region. Prior to joining the council, we were talking earlier about the Green Line and the business work along the Green Line, and I chaired what was called the Business Resources Collaborative. So we were the group that supported the 800 businesses. Many of the people around the table were the ones that sued the council to actually get funding to do work, and lobbied a number of nonprofits as well as cities, and then ultimately the council invested in supporting the businesses along the Green Line. So we helped about 800 businesses along the Green Line, and actually had a lower attrition rate amongst the businesses that were along the Green Line than the broader community that we had. So it was a fairly successful process, but not one that was laid out in the original plan that the council had for doing the work. And as Edward pointed out earlier, there was originally there wasn't even a desire to determine or say that there was going to be an impact on businesses. I owned one of those businesses. We had a 6-foot high chain link fence about 5 feet from our front door, and it was explained to us that wouldn't impact whether customers would come to your business or not, which was, I think, as the business owners as a group sort of couldn't understand how people thought that customers would still come to your business when there was no street in front of your business. In some cases, there was a 15-foot hole in front of your business and a chain link fence, but that wasn't going to have any impact. So fortunately, many people, including the council, came together to support those businesses, and you see many of them thriving today as a result of being able to make it through construction, and they're now realizing the benefits of the increased traffic that comes prior to the pandemic anyways with the Green Line and the transit activity that happened. So that's just a little bit about me. The purpose of coming today, or what I guess, you all can ask whatever questions you'd like. What I'd like to get from this is really just sort of an understanding of how, the BIPOC group and the EAC can work together. I mean, I think the goals of the two groups in many cases are very much in parallel. And so, what are the opportunities for us to work together, and how can we be engaged and work in concert around reducing disparities in our region?
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to open it up to the group to ask questions. I do just want to say again, I really appreciate Chris's leadership on management. He has really pushed a lot of these initiatives since he began serving 2 years ago, and it just really has opened my eyes. And now chairing the investment committee too, I'm asking a lot of the same questions that Chris keeps asking, in our management committee when it relates to how are we investing our money, where is the spend going. I mentioned some of that earlier as I was reporting out the last management committee agenda. So one of the things I just want to say is Chris at management, because it does have BIPOC and investment sitting under it as subcommittees of the management committee and the body of work that rolls through management. It'd be really great if we could report on some regular basis to this group or invite in input from this group on those items, you know, that we are seeing that matter to this group. So I don't know how we do that, but I think that goes to expanding your question about how does BIPOC integrate into this group as well. So I just want to let you know we're trying to work out of our silos at the council level. And so with that, I'll open it up to anybody on the committee that has questions for Chris. Edward, if you want to go first, that'd be great.
Actually, Bernadette's hand was up first. I'll go after.
All right, great.
I believe, Bernadette, I can't see your name.
Brianne?
My hand was up the whole time, so I will put it down.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
It was a leftover hand, apparently. Okay, no worries. Okay, Edward, you're up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like the aspirational goals of the BIPOC group. It is very similar to the aspirational plans that the ASC Operations Committee has put together. And maybe they need to be shared with you guys so that you can take a look at it, because our focus is on affirmative action and contract procurement. We've been making some really giant steps in working with the Office of Equal Opportunity in looking at data and beginning to understand that as a way of moving forward with hopefully some aspects of our goals being implemented, which in fact look at hiring under affirmative action operations as well as contract procurement activities. So your two central focuses pretty much align with ours. Maybe there's a chance to just merge it all, or somehow, you know, maybe they do stay independent of each other and just continue to work. But I don't know, Lyd, don't you agree that what they're planning to do is very similar to what we've laid out and have begun to work with Sai and Asante and others on?
Yes, I would agree. And I like the idea of finding some places to collaborate and reinforce the work of each other, and then maybe even places where we can find complementary things that we're working on. So that would be really nice to connect and talk further about that.
Yeah, you know, and I would just say, I think the one thing we, you know, I'm becoming more and more cognizant of is just trying to make sure we don't have staff do sort of double the work, right? So if there are data requests that people have that are, you know, two different groups are looking at similar things, there's a way to have the same data that comes up, but sort of just agree, like, you know, it doesn't really make that much difference if it's a little bit different from, you know, what one group wants or the other. So that way then, you know, staff can have sort of one set of data and not be trying to do everything, you know, multiple times to meet the needs of a variety of different groups. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're happy to, you know, it'd be great to collaborate and see. I think one of the things we're trying to, you know, we're meeting with Dr. Corey and others in next week. I mean, everybody is welcome to come to the meeting. It is an open meeting. So, you know, if there are things on our agenda that people would like to engage with or be part of or share their thoughts on, I would welcome, you know, people to do that. There are two or three people on this committee that are on the BIPOC committee. So I think the hope is that there'll be a fairly efficient data transfer between the two groups. So,
Edward, did you have another question or a statement?
A comment statement. Yeah, work with Dr. Corey on a lot of, you know, the focus is around contract and employment. the Alina community and access to that, both at the state and local communities. One of the thoughts that Leah and I talked about that would be important, maybe both our committees get a look at it, is the rescue plan money that will be flowing into the state, how that would be appropriated in the metropolitan area, and assuring that the economic framework plan that was put together by the Met Council prior to this and in a rush is aligned so that it is not business as usual when we've had these kind of major federal investments to address socioeconomic conditions. So right now, from where I sit, and just my experience tell me that there's been a doubling down on business as usual with municipal governments, county governments, and to some extent the Metropolitan Council on assuring that things are kept the same, even though the pandemic has been pretty devastating to communities of color. And even Biden in his executive order around equity has asked that contractors, federal contractors, which would be the Met Council and other bodies of government, conduct audits to determine where they stand with the utilization of communities of color and ensure that adjustments are being made so that those resources really hit those targets and are there in a race-conscious kind of way. I don't know if I'm necessarily seeing that happen at the state level, maybe a little bit. I know that Sai and Asante and them are doing some good work to make sure that things are aligned, but maybe not across the entire region. So that's just something to think about. That's a big undertaking for Operations Committee, I think, because we're still fledgling in terms of our organization, but you're right there on the council, and it may be something that orientates everything by looking at the flow of those resources and how that economic framework is established to ensure equity and inclusion with the use of those resources.
You know, I mean, recent history and history long before that would tell you that you're going to get more of the same, right? So we often in this region write glorious plans, and yet our disparities stay the same because we don't put investments where those plans are, right? We just, you know, we talk about spend with minority businesses, and people say, oh, you know, your money is, you know, I remember the term someone used, but how you spend your money is sort of a measure of your moral character. Well, if that's the truth, then, you know, if you look at what we as a council spend with minority businesses, that would not be a good indication of how most of us would like to think our view of the minority and how important the minority community is in our region, right? Because our percentage spend with the minority community of our total spend, we always like to carve things out. But if you include everything that we spend and you look at the total spend with minority owned businesses and organizations, it's incredibly small, as is the state government. State government's less than 1% or right around that 1% number of their total spend, right? So I don't, you know, history would say, and even, you know, when you watch the money flow out earlier last year, right, the big businesses owned by, you know, mostly Caucasian people got huge fat PPP loans, and a lot of the minority owned businesses that were struggling the most got nothing, right? People who had, you know, billion-dollar operations got $10 million to fuel their private jets, and people on University Avenue couldn't get access to a loan, right? I don't see that changing, unfortunately, right? I mean, I don't think, I think it's, quite honestly, it's just too hard for the people that are empowered to actually figure it out, and they don't have they want to be able to politically make a statement, but their willingness to actually dig into the details to figure out how to make that change happen is not something they're going to be able to get done in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So they'll do something that politically will look good, but the outcomes, there's no reason to believe until something changes, until we see some outcomes that are better, there's no reason to believe that it's going to be any different. And so I think when you look at a lot of the equity work, it's measurable, right? We know what the makeup of our workforce is. We know how much money we're spending with people. We know what it was 10 years ago. We know what it was 20 years ago. We know what it was 30 years ago, right? And if that's a flat line, right, we know we're not doing enough, right? So it's not a feeling that somebody has, right? We have to get over this sort of, we can measure what we're doing, and we can decide if what we're doing is representative of what the community that we serve looks like, right? And every government agency in the state of Minnesota, and really around the country, in particular Minnesota, always has excuses for why we can't crack the numbers. We can't reduce disparities, why we consistently are one of the worst places in the country when it comes to economic and educational and healthcare disparities. And so, at some point, there needs to be probably some different people that are running the show, and you might get some different results. But if you have the same group of people keep recycling through government, or the same people making the decisions, there's no reason to believe you're going to get any different results, right? So, and I would just say the biggest frustration for me as a council member is we have very, very little impact, right? And you spend a lot of time trying to have a minuscule impact on the outcomes of things. And so I think unless you're the governor, and even the governor may, I would say unless you're the governor, you really struggle to have much of an impact, right? Because individual members in the House and Senate don't get much passed, right? 3 people got together and passed the entire budget bill, right? That's all it was. 3 people got together in a room, all the policy measures, all the budget. They decided where all the money, all the $2.8 billion is going to get spent, right? So if you're not one of those 3 people, right, what do those 3 people all have in common? They don't look like you and me, right? Those are the people that are making the decisions. Those are the people that are deciding where the money's going to get spent. We will get political spin in the next 12 months for the running up to the next election, how it helped everybody. But when you go back and you look at the data, nothing will have changed, right? What we know is that, we got appointed by the governor, so we always got to be a little bit careful, but what we know is people of color are worse off today when the governor and Steve Grove got put in their positions, right? That's a fact, right? Unemployment gaps have widened, business gaps have widened, right? At some point we have to say that's not enough, right? That's not good enough, right? We expect more as a region, as a state, from our elected and our appointed leaders, right? There's all kinds of curveballs, right? 10 years ago was a housing crisis, right? 13 years ago was a housing crisis. The same as the pandemic. Every 10 years, we narrow the gap. As soon as there's a problem in the economy, the gaps explode all the way out to where they were before because we didn't structurally actually fix anything, right? Businesses had to hire people of color because they ran out of Caucasian people to hire. So they narrow the unemployment gaps. So I think us as a group, right, our challenge is to make sort of those meaningful underlying changes that allow those gaps to permanently narrow. And that is really, we were talking about it earlier today, that's hard work, right? Especially in this region, that's hard work. I've only been here 20 years. So I moved here from Toronto, and, it's different, right? I mean, it's just fundamentally different in other parts of the country and other parts of the world than it is here. But, if you decide to stop working on it, then it's not going to get better either. So hopefully, fortunately, we've got a whole bunch of people like this committee and others around the council table that take a lot of pride in trying to make those incremental changes, because at least if we're making incremental changes to the good, we're not going backwards.
Thank you, Chris. I just want to add too, I serve on community development, and I know you have a housing committee, and we just, again, we're talking in our last meeting about the beginning processes for the 2022 budget. And, I raised the fact that, we've got these goals, the goals that you have, the goals that we have, and how does that enter into the budget process early on? Because where you put your money in your budget is where you should be funding your goals directly, right? Otherwise, they're not a priority. And as Chris points out, you need to be measuring those goals or they're not a priority. So the data that Chris is talking about, and a lot of that funnels through management, I think we really should be sharing that with you, whether it's the operations committee or through community development to the housing committee, transportation, to your transportation committee. All of that data is available. And that's where I want to link up the work, because if we join together, we've got a stronger voice. And even at Met Council, I'll be very honest, as a council member, a lot of that stuff comes buttoned up to us by the time we're voting as a full group. And it's very unlike city government, where I sat for 20 years, where you have a lot of community input, and you have a lot of public access, and you have a lot of public input at the meetings. It's just not like that at Met Council. So that's why you guys are so valuable. And whatever I can do as a liaison to management, because that's my official role on this committee, please use me in whatever way I can be effective. And, you know, let's just keep pushing.
So
That's all I can say.
So Transportation Committee has, so just one other thought. Transportation Committee has some of their other subcommittees that are reporting into them on a monthly basis. You know, if EAC would like to do that, Francisco was always concerned just about a time commitment of the EAC members and not wanting to ask them to do too much. But that would be one option. That would be, I think, a good way to report back into the management committee and have it, you know, in the public record, what, you know, and let all of us know what is, you know, what are sort of the highlights or what are the key things that are happening at the EAC to make sure we're well coordinated.
Well, I think through operations, we will be hopefully advancing some recommendations that get at targeting. And we have the data that I think we need to more than justify a need for that. I was intrigued by Lesley's budgeting approach. I'd like to study that more, and maybe that's something that she put up the list, and that wasn't the details that they went into, but that list is pretty telling because it's built around equity, and how she's doing that could inform a lot. And I also think that Mr. Toussaint's comments about, you know, this doesn't have to be the law. Sometimes they force you to fall back on that, and they could be today. But there is a moral piece in all of this, moral equity, you know, our human existence. And I appreciate him pointing that out, because no one want to be in these fights or these confrontations. You would think that people would see it beyond the laws, that it's just the right thing to do. You know, we are a human community, and we should be working to support each other, and that has to permeate pretty much everything that we do, is looking at it from that perspective. We're not there yet, because money do raise the head of a lot of greedy folks who have really taken control of these systems. Somebody said it was like today the Jim Crow Jr. nestles themselves inside the operations of these systems, and they use the protection of unions and civil service rules to hide their actions, to not administratively comply with the law. And if you're not auditing to determine if those equal access and opportunity laws are being adhered to, you'll never expose them. They tend to have that responsibility. They're not necessarily of any particular color today. And they're there because they're not made from that moral fabric for equity that Mr. Toussaint talked about. And they are people who are not for and have never been for the equal access and opportunity rule in the law. They're on the books. So that's how they do it. But with that being said, there probably needs to be a larger conversation or a look at the plan that we've put together right now in this infant stage, and taking a look at that for whatever value it brings. I think we've got good staff. This team I heard today is really so refreshing to see what they're doing and how they're coming together. And they need to be supported. And I think what you're doing at the board level is so critical, because I think a lot we would do here would probably get lost if there isn't a conduit to really get into that upper echelons discussions. So we'll see. Thank you.
Are there any last comments? All right, thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for your comments and for taking time to hear about the BIPOC committee, and we'll make sure that we are connected in our work and appreciate all of the efforts by everybody here. I'll turn it back to our chair.
Thank you.
I echo those thank you. Thank you so much for all the comments and ideas and sharing what you're working on. I heard from Arena that we now have a quorum, so we are going to vote on approval of our minutes. And how this will work is we'll take a movement to approve, and we'll take a second, and then Arena will do roll call to approve our minutes. So first, do we have a motion to approve our minutes from our March meeting?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Edward. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, T. All right, Arena, you want to take us through roll call?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This time around, I will be calling committee members by your last name only. So when you hear your last name called, please say that you are here, aye, nay. So we will start with Block. Ellis McGregor.
Here.
Goldstein Moses.
Here.
Gonzalez. Jenkins. Johnson.
Aye.
Lee. Luceni.
Aye.
McDonald.
Yes.
Miller. Way.
Here.
Rothstein.
Aye.
Rudolph.
Aye.
Shake. Sitate Munene.
Aye.
Sterner. Irvina Davis. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a couple announcements, and then we'll make space if anybody else has an announcement that they'd like to share. The first is that next Tuesday, we will meet as a standing committee. The standing committee is open to all of our EAC members. And one of the important things that we do at the standing committee is set our agenda for our full EAC meeting. I encourage you to attend. You should have the link information in your calendar. And if you ever have any questions about that, you can feel free to reach out to me, the co-chair Gonzalez, or any of the staff, and we'd help you connect. The second announcement I wanted to make is we are going to be posting again for open seats on the EAC. We've had a couple members whose circumstances changed and had to step away from the EAC. As you heard today, we are doing some really important work, and there are departments and efforts within the council that are looking for us to get engaged more. That will be easier if we have a full contingent of members. So if you know people that you think would be really exceptional at providing this service to the council of sharing advice, guiding its work, and contributing in these important ways, please encourage them to apply and watch for an email out about that when it's ready to post. The final thing is as a new chair, I would love to have a few moments to talk with each of you about what you'd hope to see from me as a chair and what your own priorities are, what you enjoy about being part of the EAC, and maybe even if there's frustrations that we can work on to solve together. So I will also be sending an email out to you to schedule that time. It'll work a lot better for me if I can have it on my calendar rather than just pop in a call. So please watch for that email from me, and it'll be individual conversations. So I'll be doing that over the next few days and hopefully get to talk to each of you over the next month to 6 weeks or so. Do any of our members have announcements that they'd like to make? All right, I am not hearing any, so this adjourns our meeting for this evening. Thank you so much for your participation tonight. I really enjoyed hearing all the questions and comments, and look forward to seeing you next month for sure, and hopefully at our standing committee meeting next week.
Thank you. Have a good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.